Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be ranking 50 major American cities. So what I did was I went to cheeramerica.com. I found a list of the 100 most populated cities in the United States. And I only been to about 43 of them, so I'm not going to be ranking the rest. And I added about seven of them just to make it an even number 50. A lot of them are in California. There's not much criteria for how I rank these cities. It's just going to be based on my own experience. So I'm not going to be talking too much about random statistics, how good it is to raise a family or job opportunities, unless it comes up. For reference, I live in Southern California, but a lot of these cities are California cities. It seems like more than half of them are California cities. All the, major cities aren't in California. But I have traveled quite a bit, and I've been to a lot of different states. I've been to most of the major cities. It's going to be missing a few cities that, I never been to. Nashville, Tennessee, Louisville, Kentucky, Cleveland, Ohio, kind of just to name a few. But without further ado, let's get it started. First off, we have Anaheim, California. I think Anaheim probably go in the C tier. Of course, Anaheim is known for Disneyland, and the Angel Stadium, both of which I have gone extensively. Um, Angel Stadium is pretty cool to check out. The Angels games are Going to the Angels games is pretty fun, especially since Shohei Ohtani is playing. If he's not playing, I probably would never go to an Angels game and put this as a D tier. But outside of Disneyland and that, like, there's not too much in Anaheim. In fact, I'm not too big of a fan going to it. There's a good amount of activities, like, you know, downtown Anaheim. There's a few bar districts that you can go to. But the thing that keeps Anaheim from going any higher is just, I just like the traffic is pretty bad, and there's parts of Anaheim I just don't feel safe in. I am quite familiar with it, but that's just where I would rank it. Next up, Atlanta, Georgia. This I would say is probably another C tier. Atlanta is a pretty cool city. There's a lot to do in Atlanta. The food is really good. The people are very nice. There's the Coca-Cola Museum, the largest aquarium. I think it used to be the largest in the world, but it's just now the largest in the Western Hemisphere. The Georgia Aquarium. That's pretty cool to check out. Um, the main highlight for me in terms of Atlanta is probably the food. They have such delicious food in Atlanta. Outside of that, I think Atlanta is not a very unique city, at least aesthetically. The skyline is pretty generic. The roads just cut through the city. There's so much road in Atlanta, I feel like. So it is a bit generic on that end. Let's see. Bakersfield, California. This I gotta gotta put in an F. I'm sorry. Bakersfield. You only really go there if you're going to one of the national parks, like Yosemite or Sequoia. But Bakersfield, it's pretty flat. It's all industrial. I don't feel safe in Bakersfield. Um, you only go there, of course, as I mentioned, for the national parks. I know like quite a few friends that would go to Bakersfield for work. Like they'll host their training there or something. I don't know why it's such a popular place like for people to do like their training, but yeah, Bakersfield's really bad. Um, there's a song by Social Distortion called Bakersfield. I really like that song. That's as much as I can say about it. The sign like on the image, I've been there. It's kind of cool. Take a picture of it, but yeah, I don't like going to Bakersfield. Baltimore, sorry, I gotta put it in F tier. I hope I don't offend too many people with where I rank Baltimore. Maryland is a pretty cool state, actually. I do like Maryland quite a bit. Um, but Baltimore is not one of the reasons. There's there's a lot better places in Maryland or like in the DMV area to visit. Just not Baltimore. Baltimore, it's quite Baltimore. It's kind of a ghost town. The downtown, there's probably no one there. There's not a lot of activities to do. I feel like it is kind of a dirty and grimy city. Um, there's not a lot of reasons for me to go to Baltimore. If there are more reasons, feel free to let me know. But as far as I see, I don't know. Baltimore is just not very nice. The buildings are very old and rugged. Like I feel like I'm in an abandoned town. This is like where the zombies, the zombies invaded. bro. Like, not a big fan of Baltimore. Boston, Massachusetts. This I probably got to put in A tier. Boston is a very nice city. There's quite a lot to do there. Harvard's there. There's a lot of historical building. Paul Revere history is over there. The architecture is quite nice. It's like early 1700s colonial buildings. Boston does do a pretty good job on preserving some of its more historical buildings. I like the brick type buildings that they have there. Um, People say the clam chowder is really good, but I'm a really big fan of their lobster chowder. That's something you got to try out when you go there. But yeah, like that's probably gonna be my first A tier. Charlotte, North Carolina. I think I had to put it in a D tier. Now, Charlotte, what can I say about Charlotte? I mean, it's an upcoming city for sure. Like if you, whenever you look at the top 10 upcoming cities in the US, I think Charlotte, it's always there. It's a big city in the South, but it's not as quite as good as Atlanta. And Atlanta, I'm already putting at C tier. So I think I have to put it at D tier. Charlotte, there's really not much to do there. Chicago, Illinois, that's gonna be my first S tier actually. Chicago, I love the city. The skyline is absolutely beautiful. The Magnificent Mile, it's really nice. Lake Michigan is really nice. It has the second most skyscrapers in the US. First, of course, is New York, but it's very distinct from New York. I think Chicago has a lot more classy architecture. You know, the architecture is very classy. It looks visually appealing. Um, it just seems endless with the amount of skyscrapers there are. I'm a big fan of the Chicago Art Museum. There's plenty of good art there. The Bean, people think the Bean is like such a representation of Chicago, which it is. But funny enough, I think that the Bean was only made in 2006, and wow, like that's like such a quick rise to fame, I guess, because um for a monument that's less than 20 years old, it's already been a symbol of Chicago. The Willis Tower or Sears Tower is also pretty nice. The United Center, you can check out the Michael Jordan statue. Chicago pizza and Chicago hot dog, they're really good. Architecture, I do think it's on par with New York, but it is pretty distinct from New York, as I mentioned, the classy and historical aspects of it. Chula Vista, that city by San Diego. I don't know. Like, I don't really have much to say about it. It's a nice city, so B tier. Next up, we have Dallas, Texas. Dallas, I would definitely put it in C tier. Dallas does have quite a bit to offer. Downtown is pretty nice. Um, they have the cool, they have the cool like three statues. Forgot what to call them. I'll show a picture of it. Um, Food there is really good. JFK Memorial, you can learn all about the history here in Dallas. The thing that prevents it from getting any higher is that there's one big drawback about Dallas, and I think it has like the worst roads in the US. Like the highways just cuts through this entire city. There's just so many roads. I feel like, they could design it a little bit better, like the roads just pretty much cut through the downtown, where it's just like wow, like so much of the real estate is just taken up by these highways, subways, and bus station. I'm sure they're there, but they're virtually non-existent. Definitely one of the most car-centric cities I've been to, which it just makes it like very unwalkable. If you don't have a car, like you can definitely not live there. Um, it's just it's way too car-centric for me. Denver, Colorado. This I gotta put it in S tier. Denver, Colorado. It definitely holds like a special place for me. I There was a point where I would go to Denver like 3 or 4 times a year, just because it was like I really liked it and it was really cheap to go there. Like flying out of Ontario Airport in California, it ranges between like 90 to $180. Like it was very cheap to do like a round trip flight there. Denver, I definitely gotta give props to like all the hiking activities that are around. It's very scenic. The landscapes are pretty diverse. Anywhere you drive from Denver, north, south, west, east, you'll definitely stumble upon like, either like a national park or like, if you go, if you just drive 40 minutes north, you'll see Boulder and you'll see the half iron structures. There's Gardens of the Gods. There's so much to do in Colorado, and Denver is the epicenter of it. I remember going to a Rockies game when I was there, and they had a very nice stadium. Union Station is also pretty nice. The city, especially downtown, the public transportation is not too bad. Especially downtown, it's pretty walkable. So I would have to put in S tier. Next up, we have Fort Worth, Texas. Fort Worth, I think I have to put it in B tier. I do like Fort Worth quite a bit. All the rodeos that are there, the cowboys, the downtown area, that's probably the main reason why you will want to visit Fort Worth. It's definitely the best cowboy major city I've been to the US. I'm pretty sure a lot of it is just made for tourists, but when you're there, it does feel like authentically Western. Like the architecture, straight out of Red Dead Redemption. You'll see cowboys with cowboy hats and cowboy boots there, like a lot more so than Dallas. So I had to put Fort Worth at B tier. Fremont, California, that city in the Bay Area. It's a hard time ranking this. Maybe C tier. I don't have a lot to say about it other than houses are nice, they're expensive. It's near all these car manufacturers like Tesla, but it's very boring. Fresno, California, D tier. Fresno is like just another Bakersfield. I think it's slightly better because there's one or two things to do in Fresno as opposed to Bakersfield, which is zero. All these Central California cities are basically just like, wastelands. Garland, Texas, probably another B tier. It's smaller than Fort Worth, but it's still authentically Wild West to me. Again, this is just off my personal experience, and how I rank it is just how I personally feel. So some of the reasons might be a little bit arbitrary. But Garland, Texas, it has really good restaurant there. It's called Intrinsic, and that's the best brisket I've ever eaten in my life. Like it was so good, and that's the reason why Garland, Texas, is in B tier. Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm gonna put that in A tier. It's the only Hawaiian city on this list. Honolulu is located in Oahu. Um, for a city that's just in the Pacific, it does feel like a really huge city. Even though Hawaii is pretty much in the middle of nowhere, the white skyscrapers contrasting with the beautiful, clear blue waters, it really fits well with the city. Honolulu, basically, when you're in Honolulu, like you're right where the beach is, Waikiki Beach. There's so much to do in Honolulu. It has great poke, great outdoor water-based activities. Like you can do surfing lessons or scuba diving. You can drive a motorbike around the city. Go a little bit outside of Honolulu, you'll see the most beautiful like mountains that you'll ever seen. For the only major city in Hawaii outside of maybe Hilo, like it is quite impressive how they can just build that like on a tiny island. Houston, Texas. I'm sorry, I gotta put this at D tier. I think this is the third or fourth largest city in the US. And for such a big city, it is quite disappointing. Houston, there's really nothing to do. I feel like the other Texas cities has more to offer. The weather's pretty humid, architecture's pretty ugly, traffic's pretty bad. A lot of people move to Houston probably because of the cost, but it's boring. There's probably two things I can know about Houston. There's a lot of Vietnamese people for whatever reason, so there's good Vietnamese food there, and the NASA Museum, which is cool to check out. But other than that, like Vietnamese food, just go to Orange County if you're in the US. I guess if you're in Texas, you could probably go there. I think Hu I think Houston's also the birthplace of Vietnamese Cajun food. Um, I guess that's a fun fact. But other than that, I don't really like Houston that much. Irvine, California. Irvine, I gotta put it in A tier. Now, this is kind of biased, probably for people outside of California. They'll think Irvine is pretty boring, which it probably is from an outsider's perspective. But Irvine, California is the safest city in the US. The architecture is really nice. For a Southern California city, it is quite safe and quite clean, which like a lot of cities here are, but you'll be surprised how much like we take it for granted in Southern California. A lot of our cities are not safe and are not clean. And also there's really good Asian food in Irvine, California. Um, Pretty much like the best in Southern California, from my experience though, outside of maybe 626 area, Monterey Park, San Gabriel Valley. But the difference between that and Irvine is that Irvine, it just feels super clean, super modern. It's almost like Singapore in a way, because it's just like a very diverse Asian population, but they keep it so safe and clean. We have the only Korean spa that I can find in the US that it's like as authentic as it can be. Um, so for that, I gotta put an A tier. Jersey City, New Jersey. This is the city right off Manhattan. I'm gonna put it in C tier. Jersey City, it does have like a skyline, but since it's right across from Manhattan, like why would you even go there? Let's go to Manhattan. But the reason why I put in city is because like when you're there, you can get really good views of the financial district of Manhattan. For that, I'm just gonna put it C tier. Las Vegas, Nevada. This is another city that I would frequently visit. I would put it in A tier, actually. I think before I didn't appreciate Las Vegas as much, mainly because I would go there with my family. So of course, I was kind of underage. I was just following them around everywhere. But I visited a couple times since becoming an adult, and it is pretty fun when you're there. Going down the strip, it is a pretty unique experience. I think as a Southern California native, we kind of would take Las Vegas for granted just because how close we are to it. But if you really think about it, like no other city in the US is anything like it. Going down the strip or Fremont Street and seeing all the bright lights, it's a little bit of sensory overload. I do like how traditionally 50s some of the signs are. A lot of the hotels, they stay the same since the 50s, like Caesar's Palace, that's been there forever. So it does kind of feel a little bit like a historical city. One of the biggest cons is that it is in the middle of a desert. So if you go, especially during the summer, it's 100 to 110 degrees plus. I mean, I do enjoy visiting Las Vegas for sure. Long Beach, California. I don't have much to say about it. I don't go there too often. Um, the ocean is quite nice when you're looking at it. It is a port city. The Los Angeles, California. This is quite a bit of a love and hate kind of city. There are a lot of cons, especially as a Southern California native. You just don't go to LA too much. Like you try to avoid going to it. There's so much to do in LA. There's Hollywood, there's Griffith Observatory, Santa Monica, Venice. There's tons of beaches, tons of bars, tons of nightlife to do around here. The traffic is pretty horrible. Just from my personal experience now, since I'm near LA, I just try to avoid going to it. But I do have to recognize that I did have quite a bit of fun when I'm in LA, going to even the tourist attractions. Um, if you've never been to Hollywood Boulevard, I see the Hollywood sign, going to Santa Monica, going to Beverly Hills. I do recognize that it is a pretty fun place. Just for me, just contrasting between the pros and the cons, I'll just put it in C tier. I think it's fair. There's probably people that would put in S tier. There's probably people that would put in F tier. I recognize both the pros and cons of the city, so I think C is pretty fair. Miami, Florida. This is another A tier city. Miami, Florida. It was such a beautiful city when, especially when you're driving around at night. Um, or if you play Grand Theft Auto Vice City, it's a lot like Miami. In fact, that's where GTA Vice City is based off. Just driving around at night, seeing the tall buildings, the skyline in the city is probably the one of the best I ever seen. Probably the third best outside of New York and Chicago. It's another beach cities where all the skyscrapers are pretty much white, similar to Honolulu or San Diego. Miami, it definitely is like a spring break kind of party city. So if you're into that, you definitely have a great time there. A lot of people come from all over the world during like, spring break, summer break. It's pretty much like the best beach city in the Atlantic. I find a lot of beach cities on the East Coast to be kind of trash, but The Florida cities are pretty good in terms of that. Next, we have New Orleans. I would put it in the S tier. Like if you're like a history buff, if you like French/European architecture, if you like historical districts, great food, New Orleans is definitely the place. Cajun food is absolutely delicious. When I was there eating oysters and crawfish and gumbo, definitely one of the best regional foods I ever tasted. Also, birthplace of jazz. When you're walking around French Quarter, you'll just hear jazz everywhere. But what definitely puts it in S tier is just the architecture alone. It's quite stunning and beautiful. No other place in the U.S. have architecture quite like New Orleans. It is pretty unique. If you watch Princess and the Frog and you go there, you'll definitely like see all the references to the city. I did a swamp tour in New Orleans. That was pretty memorable as well. Next up, we have Newark, New Jersey, probably F tier. There's not a single New Jersey city that I enjoy going to. Newark has one of the big three airports of New York City, even though this is technically the only one that's not in New York. There's LaGuardia, JFK, they're both in Queens, and then we have the Newark Airport, which is in New Jersey. So it's actually not quite far from New York City. Newark, I feel like it's just another crappy like East Coast city like Baltimore. The skies are gray, the buildings are gray. The downtown is pretty much dead. I don't like New York. And New York City, definitely deserving of S tier. There's not a lot I can say about New York City that, people haven't said already. If you're traveling to the US for the first time, New York City is definitely the number one place I would recommend. The skyscrapers are endless. There's a bunch of iconic places. Times Square, Empire State Building, Statue of Liberty, just to name a few. There's a lot more than that. Rockefeller. It's like another city. It's like Paris, London, Tokyo. Like it's definitely in that upper echelon. I think it's pretty much the only US city where it's in that tier in terms of global recognition. I do have quite a bit of memories going to New York. I've been there probably three times, and every time you go there, you'll find something new. There's just endless amount of things to do. When you're in New York, you're probably staying in Manhattan, but if you're going for a long time or a second or third visit, check out the other boroughs too. Brooklyn has some pretty cool stuff. Queens has some pretty cool stuff. Next up, we have Oakland, California. I'd probably put it in F tier. There's probably no reason for me to go to Oakland. For a Bay Area city, it is quite not nice, to be honest. But for how not nice it is, the prices of this place pretend like it is pretty nice. Just because it's in the Bay Area, then for that alone, the Golden State Warriors, they no longer have a stadium in Oakland. Instead, now they moved it to San Francisco. So for me, there's pretty much no reason for me to go to Oakland. If I go to Bay Area, you go to like San Jose or San Francisco, not Oakland. Even though how expensive it is, it's not nice. Next up, we have Oklahoma City. I think I would put this in C tier. Oklahoma City is pretty much dead center in the middle of the US. It's pretty much landlocked, but compared to cities like, let's say, in Kansas or Nebraska or North and South Dakota, it does feel like a populated city. It doesn't feel like, you're just in the middle of nowhere. Bricktown in Oklahoma City. It is pretty cool. It's pretty much another river walk, like the river walk they have in San Antonio. It's pretty similar to that. There's a beach there for whatever reason. I don't even know like where it comes from. It is the capital city of the state, so the Capitol building, that's also pretty cool to check out. The people here are friendly. I had nice experiences in Oklahoma. When you're driving from Dallas to Oklahoma City, definitely check out the when you're driving from Texas to Oklahoma City, definitely check out the WinStar Casino, the largest casino in the world, and it's on its way. Also, Oklahoma City, they have an NBA team, which is kind of weird. You wouldn't think the city would have like any kind of sports team, but it does. I'm a big fan of the Thunder. So if it's NBA season, catch a game there. In general, I do have a nice experience in Oklahoma City. It's quite safe. The people there are super friendly. You can pretty much like approach anyone and talk to them and strike a conversation with them. And for that, I'll put in C tier. Next up, we have Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, another historical city, kind of in the same vein as Boston. I'm gonna put this in B tier. If you're a history buff, you'll definitely like Philadelphia. Two of the biggest things, Independence Hall and Liberty Bell are there. You can also get a Philly cheesesteak. Um, Outside of that, you can and check out the Rocky Steps. It's a great sports town too. You can watch 76ers or the Eagles. I used to be quite a big fan of Philadelphia because Allen Iverson, if you don't know, he's an NBA player. I used to play for the Philadelphia 76ers. For that, I'm going to put it in B tier. Phoenix, Arizona. I'm sorry, I think I'm gonna put Phoenix in D tier actually. So it's either Houston, that's the third biggest city, or Phoenix, that's the third biggest city. And both are quite disappointing in terms of things to do. Very sprawling, car-centric cities. I do really like Arizona as a state. I think there's a lot of good things about Arizona, all the national parks, all the nature. It's quite diverse. Phoenix isn't really close to any of them except for maybe Saguaro. If you're driving from California going into, let's say, Grand Canyon or what's the other one? Monument Valley, and then the Antelope Canyon, you would not even need to go to Phoenix. Even some of the other Arizona cities are cooler than Phoenix, like Sedona. It's prettier than Phoenix. The nature aspects of Phoenix, like it's not too pretty. The all the nature stuff is outside of Phoenix. Next up, we have Portland, Oregon. Portland, I think it's going to be another C tier city. It's a city in the Pacific Northwest, but I think most things that Portland has to offer, Seattle offers it, and it's much more. Portland has Mount Hood. Seattle has Mount Rainier, which is infinitely times better. I used to not like Portland. I lived in Seattle for a summer, and I would always like Portland. Like there's like everything we have here in Seattle is so much better. Hipster culture is pretty big there, which could be hit or miss for a lot of people. There's Multnomah Falls, which is pretty to check out. Voodoo Donuts. To be honest, there's really nothing special about Voodoo Donuts. There's a long line, and the donuts just taste regular to me. Um, but it is a young hipster city with plenty of things to do if you're into that kind of culture. Riverside, California, D tier. So the downtown area, it has gotten a lot better, especially within the last 10 years. There are more bars and restaurants there now than it was before. City is taking steps to make Riverside a lot safer and a lot more attractive for people coming in. The area around UCR is becoming a bit nicer too. So now they have like Asian restaurants and boba shops now, which I think 10, 15 years ago, there was kind of none of that. I do like Mission during Christmas time. The lights are pretty, but the reason why I have in D tier, for one, I live in this county. I lived in Corona, California, which is in Riverside County. Um, the main thing is like we never really go to Riverside just because a lot of parts we don't feel safe. I used to work in Riverside too. The only reason why people move to Riverside is either because they're going to UCR there or they want to find cheaper housing there. But there really isn't much to do in Riverside. Sacramento, California. Uh, I would put it in C tier. For a capital city and the biggest state, it does feel quite a bit like a small town, actually. When you drive just 20 minutes outside of Sacramento, you're kind of like almost in the middle of nowhere, which does feel kind of strange. It has a small population, but there's an NBA team there. Another one of those cities where you're just like, how is there an NBA team there? The Capitol building is quite cool. There's a tower bridge, which looks kind of ugly to be honest, but that's a place to check out. Old Sacramento, and not another Western style town similar to Fort Worth. It is worth checking out for sure, but it is kind of made for tourists. San Antonio, Texas. I think it will probably put it in B tier. The Riverwalk in San Antonio, it is much better than Oklahoma City. The brick town they have there. And I already like the one in OKC, but the one in San Antonio is just it is much better. It feels very walkable, very European. There's also the Alamo you can check out. But the Riverwalk alone, I it just pushes up to B tier for me. Next up, we have another Southern California city, which is like mid. It's San Bernardino. Put this in F tier. It's basically like a worse version of Riverside, and Riverside I already don't like going. One redeeming quality about San Bernardino, when you do like a Route 66 road trip, you'll go right through it. There are like some historical parts of it that are kind of cool. First McDonald's is in San Bernardino. They turned it into a museum. It's free. Quite an underrated place to check out. But in terms of crime and safety, it's worse than Riverside. A lot of places are dirty, unsafe, broken, gloomy, disastrous, in shambles. San Diego, I'm gonna put San Diego in A tier. Everything that LA has to offer, outside maybe Hollywood, is just infinitely better in San Diego. The weather is nicer, the beaches are nicer, it's safer there, the architecture is prettier. If people are visiting Southern California, I would recommend San Diego over LA. It's like 1,000 times more, unless you're just like super into Hollywood and you gotta like cross LA off the list. But San Diego is a lot better. It's more pleasant there to visit. The beaches are just insanely beautiful. I will often go to San Diego for weekend trips, and I always have a good time there. It might be a little bit of a bias because I live a lot farther from San Diego than LA, so it just might seem a little more special to me. But this is my own list, so just deal with it. Next up, we have San Francisco. I think I'm going to put it in A tier. There is a lot to do in San Francisco. Of course, you got Golden Gate Bridge, you got Fisherman's Wharf, you got the Palace of Fine Arts. I think that's what it's called. That really big famous palace. The painted ladies, as you can see in that picture. Food there is great. The roads are pretty unique, how it's almost like when you're driving there, it's almost at like a 90-degree angle. I think what keeps it from putting it in the S tier is that it does have a homeless problem, and it's just not like a slight homeless problem because like almost every major city in the US has like a homeless problem. I'm talking about like it's really bad. Just anywhere you go in San Francisco, the homeless problem is just quite prevalent. You'll see needles on the street. You always have to, make sure you don't leave anything valuable in your car. It is a really, really big issue, and it can definitely determine your enjoyment of the city. Also, forgot to mention, San Francisco has the best Chinatown in the US by far. This is where Bruce Lee is from. The food there is just amazing. It's still pretty cheap, even though Chinatown is near downtown, and it is still pretty authentic. It's not like, um for example, Chinatown, Portland. I don't I don't see any like Chinese people there, or like Little Italy in New York. I barely see people speaking Italian, but Chinatown, San Francisco, still pretty authentically Chinese. Another California city, San Jose. They have nice beaches there. B tier. Santa Ana. Um, I don't like going to Santa Ana. Uh, so I used to live in Orange, and my dentist was there. When I moved out of Orange, my dentist was still in Orange County, and then they moved to Santa Ana. So every 6 months, I'll actually go to Santa Ana for my dentist. That's my experience with that. They also have pretty good Vietnamese food. It's just like another Anaheim, except there's no Disneyland or Angel Stadium. Some parts are quite dangerous, unsafe, whatever. If you go to Garden Grove or Westminster, which is not that far from Santa Ana, um, like you can get your Vietnamese food fixed there. That's D tier. Next up, Santa Clara, California. To be honest, I'm kind of sick of seeing California cities on this list. Santa Clara, I'm running out of things to say. I do like the architecture in this picture, so I'm gonna give it a B tier. Seattle, Washington. This I'm gonna give it an S tier. As I mentioned, I have lived here for the summer. It does hold a special place in my heart. I like the culture there, all the grunge, all the grunge bands, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Stone Temple Pilots are from there. I do like the Space Needle quite a bit. It is a pretty unique piece of American architecture. It's very recognizable. Pike Place is cool to check out. Chihuly Glass Museum, the Museum of Flight, Fremont Street. There's so many things to do in Seattle. It's pretty much the heart of all the national parks in Washington, like Olympic, Mount Rainier, and North Cascades. Even like a day trip, like 40 minutes to an hour, you can go to Snoqualmie Falls, like if you're not into doing like a hike for the whole day. I like the people there. I have a lot of memories there, going to a Seahawks game, working at my job there, exploring the city. I've pretty much been to everywhere in Seattle, and it is one of my favorites. The grunge and alternative vibe of the city, I'm also really into. Definitely deserving of S tier. Next up, we have St. Louis, Missouri. I think I'm gonna put this in D tier. Sorry, I'm just really not into the city. It is quite generic, boring, crime-ridden, whatever. One of the most dangerous cities in the U.S. The only reason why I'm not putting it F tier, is because of the Gateway Arch in this picture. That's pretty much the only good thing I have to say about it. The Gateway Arch is iconic. It's cool to check out, take a picture of it. Um, but I wouldn't go there for more than half a day. But I am willing to give it like a second shot. If anyone wants to tell me more redeeming qualities about St. Louis, feel free to let me know. Stockton, California. This is the last California city on this list. Again, I'm so sick of California cities where it's just mid, full of crime, full of homeless, trash. It's F tier. Tulsa, Oklahoma. I don't have a lot to say about the city. It's very boring compared to the other D and F tiers. Um, no, I don't think there's like a problem with crime or homeless or anything like that. It's just super boring. In fact, it's more boring than Phoenix and Houston, which I complain about for its boringness. So I probably put it in a D minus tier. The saving grace of this city is that at least it's not crime ridden or dangerous, I feel like. Next up, we have Washington, D.C. This is going to be another S tier. For a person like me, I'm really into history and Americana, and I think Washington, D.C. is the best city for that. Better than Boston, better than Philadelphia. There's just a lot of sights to see in Washington, D.C. All the museums are there. Washington Monument, Capitol Building, the White House, the Abraham Lincoln Memorial, Martin Luther King Memorial, Vietnam War Memorial, Korean War Memorial. There's just so much to do for, like a history lover for myself. All the museums, they're all really good. All the museums that are there, it's filled to the brim with, care and a bunch of historical artifacts. And they're also free to go too. I don't mention too much about art museums in terms of ranking, just because in fact, I think all major cities in the US, they have art museums and other museums too, but they're not like very interesting. A lot of major cities, museums, like art museums, like I don't know any of the artists. They don't look too intriguing. Um, like for the ones, I can give you an example, like the one in the Portland Art Museum. There's like a bunch of art from like 2011, 2012, all this modern art that look absolutely garbage. All these abstract art looks absolutely garbage. All the museums in Washington, D.C., they have pretty good art. They have pretty good historical artifacts. There's if you watch the movie Night of the Museum, both movies, you'll enjoy the city even more. That's all the cities on this list that I've been to. So I think that's 44 of them. So I added six more so I can make it an even 50. So these are cities that are outside the top 100 most, populous cities in the US. So first off, we have Bellevue, Washington. Bellevue, Washington, I'm going to put it in A tier. Bellevue is in the Seattle metropolitan area. It is a very nice and rich area in Washington. That has been there will tell you the same thing. The houses are really nice. The buildings are really nice. There's plenty of things to do there. The hotels are just incredible. Um, I would just consider it like the Irvine of Washington. Charleston, South Carolina, I think is gonna go in A tier too. Charleston, super nice city. All the architecture are very historic. It does have quite a bit of a southern charm to it. The only reason why I'm not putting it in S tier is I feel like another city I'm gonna get to in a little bit deserve it a little more. It is another southern city with beautiful historical architecture that it's very unique. You can't find it anywhere else in the world. In fact, I'm just going to get to it right now. I'm just going to skip over a couple. It's going to be Savannah, Georgia. Savannah, Georgia, and Charleston, South Carolina. They go hand in hand. They're only a couple hours apart from each other. So if you go to that region of the U.S., I definitely recommend checking out both. But Savannah is a little bit better. The architecture are just absolutely incredible. Some of the best I've ever seen. The people are so friendly. The food is incredible. The cobblestone streets mixed with the beautiful architecture, it does feel like you're in a pretty historical part of the city, and they preserved it quite well. So for that, I gotta give it S tier. Next up, we have Cheyenne, Wyoming. I'm gonna put Cheyenne in B tier. This Wyoming Wyoming, as you guys know, is the least populated states. But Cheyenne is the most populated city in the least populated states. Based on the memories that I had there, I just would put it in B tier. It's a nice city. It's quite small for a capital city. For the largest city in a state, like there's really no skyscrapers. There's not a lot of city life. I remember having good like steak there, and the downtown area is cool to check out as well, but it's nothing special. It's nothing special. If you're going to Wyoming, you're most likely going to Yellowstone, and Cheyenne is nowhere near that. But just because, but just for the fact that I enjoyed my time there, I'm just gonna put it in B tier. Next, we have Providence, Rhode Island. I'm gonna put Providence in D tier. Another very boring city. Uh, this is where Brown University is at. It's cool to check out there. I had very horrible vegan food there. I think when I was there, there was like a place where it says like, number one best vegan food in the US or something like that. And I'm not a vegan, but I saw it's like, like if it's the best vegan food out there, like it must be pretty good. No, it was trash. I went there, it was rainy. It's boring. If you're going to New England and you want to get a taste of New England culture, just check out Boston. And if you're not into that city life and you want to see something more, nature and rural, check out the cities in Maine or check out parts of Vermont. It's much better. So there's pretty much no reason to go to Providence, Rhode Island, or anywhere in Rhode Island for that matter. The last city I have on here is Salt Lake City, Utah. Salt Lake City, I would put it in C tier. Utah is one of my favorite states. It has the Big Five, the five national parks there, and you're going there. It's actually nowhere near Salt Lake City. There, it's all in, the south of Utah, and Salt Lake City is more towards the north. But it is a very nice city. Salt Lake is cool to check out. The Capitol building is cool to check out. Um, some of the churches they have there, they have really nice exteriors. I remember going to a jazz game here, and I had quite a bit of fun. It was Jazz versus Trailblazers. So that experience makes the city a little bit higher. I'm not gonna lie, it's not the most fun city to be in if you're in that area of the US. I recommend Denver a lot more. But Salt Lake City, it's not bad. Like, it's not amazing. It's not, it doesn't have like a crime or homeless problem. So it's not great. It's not bad. It's just in the middle. All right, so that's my ranking of 50 major US cities. I know there's a lot of California cities on this list. In fact, it feels like it's more than half the list, to be honest, now that I just did it. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to let me know your guys' opinions. Let me know your guys' rankings. Should some cities be a little bit higher or a little bit lower? let me know. So that's all the time I have. You guys have a great day.